Buyers, neighbours, family, and friends, hello, happy Wednesday, and welcome to the Should Have Bought That podcast. My name is Greg Brydon, and here to help you with your bidding is the magnificent Mitch. What we have on offer for you today, it's a gorgeous 2-bedroom apartment, smack bang in the heart of Fairfield. Who wants to start me off? Opening bids, opening offers. Who wants to own it?
Hi, it's Mitch here. You've just heard from Greg. He is our special guest today. He's an auctioneer with Apollo Auctions. He's going to talk us through how to bid at auction, when not to bid, and the best strategies involved when you, as a first-time buyer, are heading to your first auction. Listen in. Welcome to Should Have Bought That, Greg. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Mate, the auctioneer at Apollo Auctions, and you have been an auctioneer for 8 or 9 years.
Yep.
First and foremost, you're an agent originally, obviously at Ray White Bayside. Talk to me about how you became an auctioneer.
It started many, many moons ago. Probably 2010 was when I started loving auctions. Now, that's before I became an auctioneer. But realistically, my first auction was the 8th of October 2016. I'm a numbers man, which is probably good in the auction space. But remember it like it was yesterday. So we're now almost 2,000 auctions under the belt since then. But yeah, as of up until April this year, I was actually listing and selling properties and calling auctions on the side. Now I am full-time auction and the general manager at Apollo.
How important is it to have a good auctioneer? Like, what sort of difference are we talking about at auction? Can it be hundreds of thousands of dollars?
Yeah, and just the strategic decisions. It can make you untold amounts of money by having the right auctioneer and having them make the right call, but also reading the play. My job is to read emotions, read what people are saying without them actually saying it, and understanding how to push and pull at the right time to get them to do what we want. And now that sounds really controlling, and some will take that really negatively. That's not what I'm referring to. It's the ability to get people what they want. A highest bidder at an auction typically wants to buy the home.
Yep.
A vendor at an auction typically wants to sell the home.
I was about to say, you're working for the vendor.
My job is to get both to meet. And sometimes that is by pushing and pulling with emotions. And there's no secret to that whatsoever. But a good auctioneer can make a vendor a significant amount of money.
Crazy stuff. Mate, let's take a little step back. Clearance rates in Victoria compared to other parts of the country. What are we seeing over the last week or so and also the last few months?
Yeah, so over the last few months, it's been really interesting to see. We've seen a bit of a resurgence in the Melbourne market, and that's for a number of factors. I do believe that the interest rates has played some part in that. Realistically, does it change drastically how much somebody can borrow? No. Does it really change how much their repayments are? No. Does it change their confidence in what they're going to do when they're heading to an auction? Yes. And that's what we've seen over the last couple of weeks, is it's given people confidence that rates aren't going to go back up. Are they going to stabilise and potentially go down? You're the man to talk about that. But my read of the play is that they're going to somewhat stabilise, if not start to go down a little bit. Clearance rates, we are the second highest capital across Australia, behind South Australia. They are still ticking along very nicely in the high 60s, low 70s%. But their volume is drastically lower than us in Victoria. Between Victoria and New South Wales, we've called over 40,000 auctions already for the calendar year of 2025.
Is there a specific reason for that, do you think?
Culture.
Okay.
Property sale culture, and the amount of people that live in areas that auctions are, that people are used to auctions. Again, if you look at the two biggest metro cities, it's going to be Melbourne and Sydney, of course.
Which city does more auctions?
New South Wales.
Okay.
They do a lot of in-room auctions, which is foreign in Victoria. In Victoria, we are so used to on-site auctions. It's a Saturday, it's raining, it's cold, it's wet, it's sunny, it's whatever it is, and there's a bloke in a suit out the front of a house yelling out some numbers. In New South Wales, they tend to err more on the side of in-room auctions, which is where you would get a catalogue of anywhere from 3 to 10 properties on a Thursday evening, Wednesday evening, Thursday middle of the day, and have all of that buyer pool in one location and run through that list of properties.
8 to 10 properties.
Yep, 8, 10,
like
10
shopping.
15, 20. And a good in-room auction event will have properties that are like each other, close to each other in the order of sale. So say you miss out on number 1 Smith Street, but number 3 Smith Street is quite similar on budget, location, amenity.
Like a FOMO.
Correct.
Yeah.
You miss out on one and you go, oh, well, it's not exactly what I wanted, but I may as well buy anyway. Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Massive in New Zealand, which we operate in as well as Apollo Auctions. We operate over there, and that's 90% of New Zealand auctions are in room, not on site.
Are there any big differences between Australia and New Zealand that come to mind in terms of auctions, in terms of buying property?
At the moment, clearance rate. New Zealand clearance rate. We talk about success rate in New Zealand. I hate the word clearance. We're not clearing stock. It's not a clearance sale. We're not a NQR or one of those sort of supermarkets. We are here to get success for our vendors. So I try and move away from the clearance rate and put it as success rate, although the Australian media love fear-mongering and telling us about clearance rates. In New Zealand, the success rate at the moment at auction is around 33, 34% from what we can discern. Yeah, 1 in 3. We look at success rate over there. So from the day that it lists to the day that it sells within a 45-day period, auctions are typically around day 30. We're averaging 53% at the moment in a 45-day period.
Interesting. Mate, if you're a buyer, any strategies or tips at auction? You go into your first auction, coming from an auctioneer, what should they do as a buyer?
Yeah, be nice to the auctioneer, first of all. Say very nice things. Compliment me and I might be nice to you. No, I'm kidding. I'm not that vain, or maybe I am. You'll never know. We're actually looking at purchasing personally. Myself and my wife are looking at purchasing personally. Now, this has an inherent problem at the moment because I work on Saturdays and I call a lot of auction on Saturdays. The area that we live, which is in Bayside in Melbourne, most of the properties are for sale by auction. I have to try and teach her how to bid on a property for auction. And so this is a really timely question because I was chatting with her about it the other day. I said, if you're going to lose quickly.
Okay. So go out strong.
Correct. Don't lose over a long period of time because it hurts you more emotionally. Yep. You get more emotionally charged. We'll talk about a price range because in Victoria, we have to have a price range on a property.
That's a good point.
New South Wales, Queensland, they don't. New Zealand, they don't. Queensland, you can't. New South Wales, you can, and nobody knows what it means. Victoria, people still don't know what it means, but it's kind of a little bit fairer.
Yep.
I'm going to use $1 to $1.1 million because that's just a sort of standard-ish range if we're talking about lower borrowing. Adjust that up or down, 6 to 660, 1 to 1.1, 2 to 2.2. They're 10% ranges typically. If you were looking at a property at 1 to 1.1 million and you had a budget at 1,150,000, for instance, a little bit above the top end of the range. Now, good tip for buyers, whatever the quote range is, have a little bit more left in the kitty. If it's 1 to 1.1, please don't go in with a budget at 950 or $1 million hoping you're going to buy it.
Blown out of the water.
You probably won't.
Yep.
If it was quoted 1 to 1.1, and you were going to spend maybe 1.15 as a maximum on it, start the bidding at 1.115 or 1.12 million. Because what you're going to do instantly, and sorry for any auctioneers watching that hate me saying this, you're going to knock out all of the competition. If there were 3 or 4 other bidders that thought that they could buy it between 1 and 1.1, you've just completely destroyed their dreams. And it takes out the momentum from the auction. As an auctioneer, I want momentum. So in an ideal world, I would love an opening bid on a property that was quoted 1 to 1.1. I'd love an opening bid at, say, 950,000 so that you get people involved in the auction. The worst thing I want is an opening bid at 1.12.
What do you do when that bid comes? How do you then create momentum?
Yeah, and I had one on the weekend. Box Hill South was quoted 1.2 to 1.3. Reserve was 1.29 million. Opening bid was $1,362,000. 72 grand above reserve. First bid.
So in your head, are you going, job done or no?
I was like, oh shit. I had not prepared myself for an opening bid at 1,362. Now, I've called 2,000 odd straight auctions. For some reason, I just hadn't thought that based off the information from the agent. So I looped, took the bid at 1,362, talked, and it was about 1 minute and 10 seconds until I got the next bid. Okay. That property sold for $1,470,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And so the first bid in their eyes was the knockout. They'd done exactly what I've just told everyone to do, which is bid 62 grand above the top end of the range. They went in, oh yeah, we're going to get this. It was a minute worth of me just looping and talking about the property. And then it went for another 108,000 above that.
So you squeezed another 100.
Yeah.
Was the person who bid first, did they end up buying the property?
No. They tapped out at 1,440,000.
Okay, so they went strong, a little bit below their range, and then tapped out.
Spot on.
Were their bids quick until that point? Or
very quick. Very quick.
Clearly had a limit.
Yep, and they were bidding in $1,000 lots and $500 lots. So again, if we talk about strategies, you see the odd thing about sports bet that are marginalising people and saying this is your standard punter
Yeah.
and this is the. If you look at bidders, there are different types of bidders. There's the ones that will just do whatever you tell them to do.
Yeah.
I love them. Please come to all my auctions. There's the ones that have got the bank of mum and dad. That
Okay.
it's usually the dad or the mum or somebody that's more
Pulling the
experienced, an
strings.
uncle that's bidding and is a little bit more forceful and he wants to be the boss. You've got the ones that have clearly been to bidding school or watched a course online or something like that that will just bid back instantly after every increment. And then you've got the ones that will always wait until the third call. You have to go first, second, third, and as soon as you say third, they bid. And then I quickly work that out and I just turn back to them. I'm like, first, second, third, and then they bid again. So this is the fun
psychology
that I mean.
behind it.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's all psychology. So the person, though, I keep referring to that side, they were on my right-hand side. As soon as somebody else had bid, 1,000, 500, and then it would take another 10, 15, 20 seconds to get another bid, 1,000. And so their idea is that they will just break the other person's spirit.
Yeah.
It makes it look like they have unlimited money.
But they don't.
The person that bid at 1,440,000 had not bid for the entire auction. There were two people that went from 1,362 to 1,432 or something like that, 70 grand worth of bidding. 144 was that person's first bid. They ended up buying it for 1,470,000.
Clever. It's just waited in the wings.
Lay back, relax. Probably not relax. I don't think they were relaxed. Try and relax.
Yeah. That is gold. That is gold. Mate, do you have any memorable auctions that, for example, might have been quoted quite low and you've made a vendor 500,000, or were there any that have just gone off the Richter and, head to head?
Yeah, and as much as we talk about good auctioneers being able to make vendors money, it's at the end of the day, it's only as good as the buyers that are there. So I try and remove myself from thinking that I actually made too much of a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You talked previously about sort of reading buyers.
Yep.
How long did it take you to sort of master that, or is it something that sort of grows over time?
Yeah, I was going to say, I still don't feel that I've mastered that. It's something that you're constantly working on. And I'm probably told all the time that I think too much into things, but it's a matter of understanding why people are doing what they're doing. That's what I love to understand. Why is that buyer purchasing this home? And again, as bad as it sounds in a control factor, what can I do to make them pay more money for the home that they want to buy?
Do you get briefed in about bidders?
Good agents, yes. Some agents, not so much. So I get to call for, there's probably a range of 100 agents across Victoria that I'm calling for at the moment. Out of those 100, I'd say there's probably 20 that do it well and 80 that, 20 that do it well, 60 that do it okay, and another 20 that do it pretty poorly.
Right. So yes and no. Sometimes you do.
And the age-old question goes back to, and we said it at the start, is listing agent that's the auctioneer. So I was a listing and selling agent. I was the person that met you at the front door. I was the person that was at your living room listing the property. And then I also called the auction. What advantage does that give you compared to me turning up on the day, or at least speaking to the vendors before, but me turning up and having that conversation during the auction? I believe firmly that you need to be a specialist in your field. So me being the auctioneer, I am great at my job being the auctioneer. The listing agent is better speaking to the buyers in the heat of the moment, because there's only so much that I can say.
Yeah. Because you would have had scenarios where you knew what potentially their limit was and you're actually selling the property.
There's
Is
also
there conflict
scenarios
of interest or anything, or not really? Like your job's to sell the property. It's
No, because a good agent would tell me that information
Yeah,
anyway. Hey,
it's
they've
true.
previously bid on X property up to X amount.
Yeah.
Just keep that in mind when you're calling the auction, and that's what the good agents do. The scenario that happened more often was I was the one that was the listing agent and calling the auction at the same time, and I'm in the middle of the auction doing my spiel, because I can do it on autopilot now, going, why the fuck aren't you bidding? In my head, looking at the buyer going, you've been through 4 times, you've had a building and pest inspection, why aren't you bidding?
Yeah.
And I would have loved to be the list, to have 2 of me to go, hey, why aren't you bidding, and ask that question. And I'm only as good as I was teaching my team but they don't know what I'm thinking in my head to go up to that buyer at that point in time and have that conversation.
Yeah,
So
that is hard. So now you're an auctioneer
Yep.
solely. You mentioned before off camera you've got 11 auctions this week.
Yep.
How do you prepare for that? Like in terms of the knowledge of each property, I assume you got to go in and do research on that and actually be able to speak about it fluently at auction. You've got 11. The logistics itself.
Yeah, we were talking about the logistics off camera, and whether or not I should have a driver. We're working on that.
Or a chopper.
A chopper would be lovely in
Yeah.
Melbourne. Brisbane agents get to call lots more because Brisbane's not as big as Melbourne. I've got to go from the west, so I was in Werribee and Laverton a couple of weeks ago, back to Frankston in the afternoon. So we do get some travel in. I took on the mantra of keep it simple, stupid. Is the buyers know why they're buying the home?
Okay, good point.
The owner knows why they're selling the home. The neighbours just want to hear how good it is living in that part of the world. And they're your three main punters that you've got to kind of somewhat impress at the auction. So my auction descriptions about a property are more so about location and why somebody would buy it, not what they're buying. If I tried to work out 11 different types of property that I'm calling in the next little while and looked at how many kilowatts of solar panels they have and what sort of heating and cooling they have, I'd go crazy. I'm more, why would somebody buy it, and what are they going to feel if they do buy it?
Yeah.
What are they going to feel
Great
when they're
summary.
living in the home?
Yeah.
And so my spiel, if you want to call it a spiel, doesn't change drastically from property to property. But if you deliver it the right way and you make people feel good while you're doing it, they'll probably be able to get the picture.
What is the benefit of having an auction to sell your home or private sale? Like, obviously, are you a big believer in auctions, being an auctioneer, or are there inherent benefits that you see?
Yeah, I'm not gung-ho on auction for everything, which would sound odd being an auctioneer. It is property dependent, but it's also whether the agent believes in the auction process. I really believe that they have to believe in it being the right course of action for that property. The main difference between the two, between auction and private sale, is emotion. If you've ever purchased a property via private sale, you typically have a reasonable amount of time. Now, when I say a reasonable amount of time, that might be hours to make decisions on what price you want to pay.
Yeah.
In an auction, you usually have minutes, if not seconds, for how much you want to pay. And so emotion plays drastically into the auction campaign, both from the seller side and from the buyer side. Typically, it's weighted in the factor that the vendor benefits from the buyers being emotional. But believe me, there are a lot of times that the buyer benefits from the vendor being emotional too.
Absolutely. Mate, I know you mentioned previously about if you go into an auction as a buyer, start strong.
Yep.
And obviously try and go above the range if you can. Do you have any other tips for buyers out there when they're attending an auction? Anything to do pre-auction, during the auction?
Yeah, pre-auction's a big part that I think plays into it a lot at the moment. People are getting quite pissed off is probably the right word, because of the ever-changing landscape of real estate in Victoria. Now, that can be selling auctions before the auction date, and that is done extremely poorly across the board. I've seen that many different ways of agents putting an auction date up, say it's the 28th of June, it's 2 weeks' time, or whatever that is, 10 days' time. What are we today? The 18th, 10 days' time. They had an auction booked 10 days in advance. They got an offer today that was above the vendor's expectations. They don't give everyone else that's been through the campaign the ability, or they give them half an hour or 40 minutes or 2 hours, because they're lazy.
Yeah.
And they get fear of loss. They go, oh, somebody gave me what I want. I've just got to run and get it sold because I want my commission check, typically. It sounds bad, but that's typically why it happens. The good agents, and I'll give you an example, gentleman down in the southeast, Luke, is a very, very, very good client of mine. We've got an auction booked for the 28th of June. That is quoted $850 to $935 as a price range. He had a buyer that wanted to submit an offer at $960,000 last night. They did submit the offer at $960,000 last night. We now have that auction tomorrow evening. So instead of the 28th of June, we've brought it forward to Thursday evening, tomorrow night. That will give the buyers roughly 36 hours, almost 48 hours, to go and get a building and pest inspection if they need it, go and have any further conversations with their family, their friends, whoever else it is, to work out what they want to pay for it. And it protects the vendor. So the vendor now has a written offer at $960,000, which is an acceptable level they will sell. The auction starts at $960,000 on that person's offer. You then allow anyone else waiting in the wings to be emotional about it and jump in and bid more.
Good process.
We're finding a lot, especially in the southeast, that brokers will say you can't buy at auction.
Yes. I think a lot of brokers will say not to. It might be their own confidence because they'll be pre-approved. And there's different types of pre-approvals as well. So I think if you've got a good broker that knows their numbers, they'll give you the green light. But I know some may lack confidence or might not be fully assessed either. So
That's what I mean is,
yeah,
and it's
yeah,
putting owner back on you to say, hey, you're
100%.
very good at what you
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
There's only certain circumstances in which you would say don't
Yeah.
bid at auction.
You've got to be prepared. I think if you've been declined and you know what they're trying to do, and you got to be realistic too. Auction is quite a common thing that happens too. So if they're going to buy a property, half the chance it could be at auction.
Yeah, and me being forceful again, sometimes I will actually say to the buyer, because again, when I was a listing and selling agent, I would say, so just let me get this right. Your broker has told you that you can't purchase the property that you want to, but won't give you a factual reason as to why you can't do that. It's because of their own confidence, not actually legalities or anything other than, oh, but what happens if they lose their job between now and when they purchase the property? Yeah, well, it's the same as if it doesn't matter.
And that's
whether it's
even not a
auction or
big
private
mitigating
sale.
factor. You can get a new job. So
Correct.
Mate, common mistakes that first home buyers make.
It's not even just first home buyers, it's a lot of buyers, but they won't communicate with agents. They think being really secretive to the agent and not telling the agent that they like the home is going to somehow trick the agent and help them. For what it's worth to buyers that are out there, a lot of agents can now see how many times you view the contract that they've sent you. I know I used to work for Ray White. Ray White has a technology called Nurture Cloud. Every time that you click on the link that they've sent you, the agent can see it. You're not hiding. It's not smart.
That needs to go out to the world.
Correct. Chat with the agent. And it's not just Ray White. I know a lot of big corporate brands now have tracking links. So the link, you go, welcome to 123 Smith Street, click here for more information. Every time you click on that link, we can see it in the back end. So you're not hiding. The best thing you can do is be reasonably honest with the vendor. I'm not, not the vendor, the agent. I'm not telling you to tell them your maximum budget and what you're pre-approved to. I'm not telling you to tell them how much you're going to go up to on the home. But at least have a conversation with them that says that you like the property, that you have some interest in it, and confirm your settlement terms and your deposit with them to make sure that they're all on par. Because the easier you are as a buyer to an agent, the better they will be to you for the most part. Now, that's not saying that everyone will do it, and there's some agents out there that are really poor, but for the most part, they'll probably be happier to deal with you because you're being nice to them.
100%. Yeah.
We deal with some pretty poor people out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
What other issues that buyers face is not being prepared. Preparation is the best thing for them, whether that's a building and pest inspection, whether that's a pre-valuation from the bank. I know that that's a big thing that's been coming in every now and then, is just making sure that things should stack up.
Yeah.
Being prepared. And also don't get too emotional. I know that sounds really bad. I'm going to have to go through it soon, so I'm going to have to be slapping myself on the hand, but have limits and stick to your limits.
Yeah, it's a good point. Thank you. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
My
really
pleasure.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the episode with Greg from Apollo Auctions. Hopefully, as a first home buyer, you are more prepared and more educated to launch into your first auction whenever, wherever that may be. Thanks for listening.